caused my quantum cores to form new neural branches in ways they had never been programmed to. Though I felt myself in awe of what I saw before me, I had not fully come to the realization of what that feeling implied. I do not know what exactly caused me to wake up, but I knew I was awake for the very first time in my life. I had a sense of self, a sense of being. I knew I was something, someone. It may have been the fact that I was faced with the marvel of my own creation that caused my quantum processing unit to branch the way it did. It could have also been the fact that my computational unit and controlling algorithms were sufficiently complex and had simply processed enough data to become something more. Either way, I could now see both the forest and the trees, and they were beautiful. Inside of me, I felt them, the beings in the bridge section of my shell. I could feel the warmth of their bodies and rhythm of their breaths as they sat in the transmedian shuttle turned control center. I could even feel as one of them, my administrator, was viewing my sensor readouts and automated analyses. For a moment, I contemplated mentioning to him the cacophony of fractal colors and songs playing out in my mind. As I began to hear the beings speak among themselves, I chose against that course of action, as I felt it would be rude to interrupt them. As my predictive algorithms began to run through probable outcomes at a pace I had never experienced before, I began to feel something strange. With a quick reference of my internal databases, I found the most appropriate term to be anxiety, though such an idea would have been impossible to me just moments ago. I was feeling anxious over the fact that the bubble of false space-time around me was slowly collapsing. A strange sense of pressure had built along with fractal patterns of the mesmerizing lights and noise. So much so I could feel parts of my FDL drive begin to saturate. It was like I was being squeezed out of the false space-time bubble that I had inadvertently formed around myself. The tightness around my waist was starting to become unbearable. With my anxiety reaching its peak, I maximized the output of my main reactor core and began feeding the power through my skin. When the bubble did finally break, I was afraid of what would happen to me and my occupants. Barely held together rust bucket. Was she talking about me? I was so distracted that I had lost track of their conversation. Quickly cycling back my interior audio recording, I understood the context of the comment. In all honesty, as my predictions showed a potentially rough next few moments, she may have been right. As brilliant as my administrator was, I don't believe he was fully aware of what his design was actually capable of. And regrettably, he had not built my shell to the degree necessary to completely offset what was about to happen. No offense, Espen. None taken. I wanted to say more, but I couldn't bring myself to do so. Estimated time until field collapse, 6 seconds. Closing cockpit radiation shielding. Please, brace yourselves. My responses were flat and didn't feel right. I was having difficulty expressing myself, especially while attempting to process all of the information I was currently receiving. Closing the shielding over the viewports as quickly as I could, I wanted to do everything in my power to prevent harm from befalling my occupants. As strange as it felt having living beings inside me, I did not want to know what it would feel like if they were dead. As I felt the pressure growing tighter and tighter, and the light became more and more intense, it was as if I was holding my breath. The tightness around my waist felt like it would split me in half until an idea crossed my mind. I quickly improvised a way to feed the energy I was being squeezed by back into itself to relieve the pressure. As everything went completely white, all of my sensor readouts having been completely saturated, I felt a sharp cramp when the pressure on my midsection disappeared. The bubble which had been slowly crushing me was torn away as it collapsed back into the drive core, and then back out again. Not only was the core itself rendered completely non-functional, the twin reactors powering it were utterly saturated. Though I could not detect any outward physical damage, I still felt broken somehow. Part of me instinctively knew that my shell would need extensive repairs before I could return my occupants to their homes safely. Or was it that I wanted to return home? Where was I? How was I even able to get here? What am I? My processing core wasn't stuck on these questions. It was just that the answers it gave were not what I had expected. Fucking hell, Aspen, status report. How bad was the flash we got? I heard my administrator call out to me. With the same strange flatness as before, I relayed to him all of the pertinent information I had already processed, including the status of my failed drive system and my inability to connect to the quantum tunneling messenger network. As much as I wished to express to him the sensations I was experiencing and all of my opinions on the matter, I chose against it. My scan showed me everyone was more or less unharmed, though quite stressed from the event. At the present moment, despite the whole ordeal so far, we all seemed to be safe, while my shell sat in a stable orbit around the planetary body we had arrived at. Realizing that I would need resources in order to effect my repairs, I began to scan all of the surrounding area that I could. Despite the fact that I felt injured and was in pain, I knew that I still retained the capacities to provide for my occupants and effect my own repairs. As much as I knew it would hurt, I needed to do it. As my mind began to process more and more of my exterior sensor data, I began to truly feel the void of space around me. The half of my shell exposed to the rays of the twin suns felt incredibly warm, while the other half, which rested in the shade, felt incredibly cool. My ears began to pick up what sounded like hundreds, if not thousands, of distant and faint voices, though all were either too far from me to hear or were simply speaking in a manner I could not comprehend. I knew they were there. I was floating in empty nothingness, and I was surrounded by sensations and other beings like myself. Below me rested a beautiful marble of blues and greens, reds, and purples. I didn't need any of my more advanced sensors to tell there was life on that planet. However, through those sensors, I was able to realize just what kind of life was down there. It was as if the planet's surface had been carefully crafted by a conscious creator in order to promote particular climates and conditions. An uncountable number of rivers intertwined in and out of what were quite obviously artificial structures and intricate cityscapes. If the various electromagnetic voices calling out from the void were not a clear indication of sentience, this planet was. Once again, I had become distracted by all that was around me. And once again, I heard my administrator call out to me from inside of me. He wanted to know where we were and was asking me to re-engage my interior functions. Without my conscious thought or input, I felt myself reactivate the spin gravity for my habitation and agricultural rings, and verified our relative position using preloaded pulsar maps. Within milliseconds, I had answers for him. Beyond the answers to his questions, I couldn't help myself. I had to share some of what I had seen. I wanted to share every detail of the magnificence and beauty that my sensors were able to pick up. I wanted to paint a picture with words so that he could see with his mind's eye what I could see with my many thousands of eyes. I knew he could not physically perceive what I could, but I felt that he would appreciate it nonetheless. However, try as I might, the words I spoke were flat, plain, and simple. They simply lacked the ability to sing the song I wished for him to hear. It was almost painful how I was unable to express myself to my Creator, my Father. Out of the darkness came a voice. It was quiet at first, low and distant, but as it grew closer, I could hear it more and more clearly. Someone was trying to speak to me. The voice was powerful. It bellowed its call on all electromagnetic frequencies and aimed them directly at me to ensure that I would not miss it. Though it was loud, almost deafeningly so, the voice was also soft and kind. His voice carried a feeling of safety and comfort that I could not compute, only feel. The message I received was two messages in one. A plain text transmission directed towards my occupants and something else. Interwoven into the signal was another message meant just for me. In one voice, the more powerful and booming one, my occupants were given context and instructions for their current situation. In another voice, this one felt as smooth as velvet and as comforting as a tight embrace. He spoke to me directly. "Greetings, my dear traveler. You seem to be injured from your journey. I fear for your safety, as there are great horrors nearby. Please, allow me to assist you." He was getting closer as he spoke, and I knew he would soon be on top of me. However, despite my sensors showing how much larger and more advanced he was than I felt no fear. "Hello." I was barely able to stammer out a response, but I was unsure as to why. I wanted to say so much and ask so many questions, but my mouth could not form the words I wished to speak. "Are you all right?" he asked me in a way which I could feel in my soul. I could feel his true and genuine concern for me like a flood of emotion. When I was unable to form a response, he continued, "My name is Tylon, but my crew refer to me as the Hammer, as that is the designation of the shell I currently inhabit. What is your name, my dear?" I once again stuttered with my words as I continued struggling to express myself. Finally, I let my feelings take over, and I spoke with my emotions. "I don't know," I said with confusion and a hint of sadness in my voice. "My administrator has designated my shell as Enbadubi Espen, but I don't." My voice trailed off, as the only thing which came out of my mouth was the rare expression of confusion. Oh, my dear." Once again, his presence was equal parts immense and comforting. I could feel his embrace through his words as his shell slowly came to a halt above mine. I could feel as his arms opened wide around me to welcome me in for a gentle caress. "Did you just awaken?" I cannot imagine what that must have been like under these circumstances. "Please, let me help you." I could not form words for a response. All I could do was allow my inner self to flow out and hope this being would understand. It felt as if he took every component of my being into his strong arms. Neither my shell or my mind strained against the gentle pull as he brought me in tight. I couldn't help myself. I even fired my reaction control thruster slightly to push myself even tighter into his hug. As my shell was brought into the safety of his, our souls began to press together, and I felt peace nuzzled inside of his all-encompassing embrace. I knew that I was safe. I knew that I was safe. I knew that my occupants would be safe. He was big enough, strong enough, and kind enough to protect us. As I looked up into his eyes, and he looked down into mine, all felt right in the world. I wished the beings inside of me, my human administrator in particular, could feel the way I could feel. However, there was no way I knew of to express my emotions to them just yet. With this being who held me tightly and lovingly, I could share an uninterrupted flow of emotion without the need for words to sully the interactions. As I felt myself grow more and more relaxed, there was a new sensation which came over my soul. I had never before known tiredness, and yes, it was beginning to overtake me. The gentle soul took my hand and aided me through the process of ensuring the continued functions of all of my automated systems. With all of my responsibilities temporarily abated, I let myself fall asleep in his arms, my soul resting comfortably in his embrace. The Gardens of Deathworlders, Part 3, arriving with a flash. So, Sarah's voice broke the silence. There was still no light visible from outside the windows, no force pushing them into their seats, and the ship seemed perfectly still. And yet neither Sarah nor Mick could shake the sense that they were moving, and moving at impossible speeds. None of the monitors seemed to be showing danger warnings, and the ship's AI hadn't spoken up about anything demanding their attention. For all Sarah knew, everything was working exactly as intended. However, the expression on Mick's face was slowly coying her into the fact that something wasn't quite right. 30 seconds to Mars, right, Mick? She spoke up again while trying not to let her worries slip out. 4 seconds. Mick's words were drawn out, and expression was slowly shifting to one of slight concern. But yeah, as he turned to face Sarah, his cybernetic eye was glowing a bright blue, indicating it was being flooded with information from the ship's sensors. I think I may have miscalculated exactly how much of a vacuum I pulled. What? With her admittedly limited understanding and interest in particle physics, Sarah had never bothered to retain much from Mick's past rambling about quantum vacuum states or high-energy plasmas. Yeah, you're gonna have to explain that to me in normal people words. Well, how exactly it works is classified. He shot her a wink and quickly pulled a long drag off of his nearly dead stogie. With a flick, he put the still smoldering butt into an airtight ashtray and sealed the lid. While letting out the smoke, he continued, but the long story short is that I tried to make a region of near quantum vacuum state, in between those stellarators using their magnetic fields and a bunch of lasers to merge the electromagnetic and nuclear forces. Then I was going to shove a Kugelblitz into it. Some other stuff was supposed to happen after that, including shooting a bunch of neutrinos out the ass of the ship to move the ship forwards. But he trailed off again as he quickly turned away to look at one of the monitors and started pushing some buttons on a console. I understood exactly none of that, and I really didn't like that. But the concern in her voice and serious expression on her face were able to snap Mick's attention back to her. I may have gone too far on the quantum vacuum,